all you're really doing in reality is you're making numbers on a screen move. Video games are just very complicated Microsoft Excel spreadsheets that we're inputting, essentially. I feel like some people are upset because I'm just telling you a harsh truth. Every game at its core level is a Skinner box, and then it's tricking you and thinking you're accomplishing something.
So I just played through for the first time Uncharted, the first Uncharted game, 2007. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go back and play that now, I don't know if you've played it or if you've played it anytime recently, but it really feels like a 2000s game. You know, the UI is all really big because it was made to be on CRTs, and there's no level up system, there's no experience, there's no grinding, there's no looting. It's just, oh, you find weapons and you use them.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like a selection of weapons in the game, and this level has these weapons, that level has those weapons, and it's very level oriented, that game, right?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, very like Half-Life 2.
Yeah, or GoldenEye from the 90s.
Well,
right?
that's even that's way.
Yeah. But as games have progressed and they've become more complicated, and we've kind of discovered what makes a good game, we hit a tipping point where things have almost become too refined. And the formula is now almost too known because now everyone does the exact same thing. And so you have a lot of these games that are very grindy, and it's just a bunch of level ups and stats that no one really cares about, and skill trees that no one really cares about. You can pay to win some of this stuff. You're just like collecting random fucking loot in every single game that like just doesn't fucking matter. Like, well, it's almost like things have become too refined because we found a working formula and then we drove it into the dirt. You can see the same thing in movies. Everyone wants to be the new MCU because the first time the MCU, like that first Avengers movie, amazing. Now everyone wants to be this fucking behemoth of lore with multiple branching movies and like big collaborations. And it gets to a point where, like, even though we might have understood, okay, well, this is what gets audiences engaged and interested in your product. You can they've almost like they've overdone it, and now it's become too refined, if that makes sense.
Well, so I just want to say with movies, I think that's been kind of it hasn't been to the extent that it is now, but it's always been somewhat of a thing with movies. Like, there was always the trends, we need to make Western movies now, we need to make science fiction movies now, we need to make dystopian future movies, we need to make whatever movies would be popular at the time. And I think now we're seeing that, and I think you're right. We are seeing that with everything wants to be an extended universe, and every movie that has a female protagonist wants to be Frozen, essentially. And I think it's causing a big problem with making, terrible movies again and again and again. And none of them none of them figured out. Again, the formula for Avengers was very simple. It was just, you started with Iron Man 1, which was a good movie with a good character that people liked. And that's the base you need. You can't rush it. I mean, they were building up, all these movies before they got into Avengers for years. And everyone just wants to rush it and jump the gun. But with the video game things, I don't think it's a question of that they figured out what makes games good. I think it's kind of the same thing with the news. They figured out what made games addictive. It's so much more addictive. Like when you're playing an old Uncharted game, or you're playing Half-Life 2, like you're only playing the game to see what happens next. Like, I remember it was very interesting when you were playing a Super Nintendo, like way back in the day, the reward to beating a game or the reward to beating a boss was like a cutscene. Like, the reward was plot. You played to just see what would happen next. And I think what happened was essentially the video games companies figured out that humans are very goal oriented. Every time we accomplish a goal, we get that little shot of, positive neurotransmitters that makes us feel like we accomplished something. And they kind of figured out, well, every time you level up, you get a little shot of that, right? So it's like now every game wants to like make it so that you're constantly leveling up in all these different tiny little ways. So you keep getting all these little like fake feelings of accomplishment. Oh, I leveled up this skill. Oh, I leveled up my character here. Oh, I did this. I did that. Every time you level up in one little area, you get that little boost of like, oh, I accomplished something, even though of course you accomplish nothing in reality because it's a video game. And so I think that's why every game is just but that's what video games are.
That's so sad.
Video games are essentially just a tool designed to make you feel like you're accomplishing things when you're not. That's all it is. And this is coming from someone who loves video games, so I'm just telling it out as is. And so that's why every game now shoves in all these RPGs and level up elements, because it just makes you feel like you're accomplishing things and it makes you want to play the game more.
Are you telling this story to kind of like talk yourself into putting the controller down? Sometimes.
No, I am no, I'm aware of this because of my own feelings with video games. Because I realized, many years ago, oh, this is why video games are addictive.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at a bunch of new releases, the best example is Gotham Knights. You hear about the controversy about that game?
Yeah, which is sad because I love the Arkham game series so much.
Yeah. So basically, Gotham Knights came out like what, 5 months ago. It's a relatively new release, and it's already been like massively discounted because no one wants to fucking play it because they all realize that it's just loot grinding. It's just like man, you're right, because Batman Arkham Asylum had a great story, and it didn't have this bullshit in it.
Well,
and I think at this point people are just like, okay, it had a great story for the time.
Well,
okay, for the time.
Well, no, but yeah, I understand.
You know what I mean, though? It's like, have you played Gotham Knights?
No.
Have you even tried that piece of shit?
No, it looked terrible.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, you run around, you beat up a few thugs, and they just drop like 18 pieces of loot. It's like, oh, and some of them make your stats go up, and some of them make your stats go down.
Right. Well,
and then and if you really want to feel like you won, you can actually pay to get even better stuff.
Oh wow.
And I'm like, man, have Western developers not learned from Elden Ring, where that game was like great.
Right.
That was a truly phenomenal game. And it didn't have any of that pay to win bullshit in it. It was just you and the world and hard enemies and have fun.
I think people forget how important context is. Because like when you're playing a video game, all you're really doing in reality is you're making numbers on a screen move. And then you trick yourself because those numbers are translated into like a picture on your screen, and you see that picture and you associate some sort of emotional attachment to that picture. And that's all context. It's all just context that trick us into moving numbers around on a screen, essentially. Video games are just very complicated Microsoft Excel spreadsheets that we're inputting, essentially, with a bunch of like pretty pictures to distract us. But so what I mean, the reason I'm bringing this up is because like when you're playing the Arkham games, the original Arkham games, the first one, really good story. The second one, third one had good-ish, decent-ish stories, but a lot of stupid shit also happened too. Batman's love affair with the Joker was preposterously overdone, in my opinion. But anyway, the reason you like those Arkham games so much, in my opinion, is what you hear. It's like a meme. Every single person would say this, and they would make fun of them for saying it, but it was true. They'd say, the game makes you feel like Batman. But that's true. You'd play the Arkham games, and you felt like Batman. You felt like such a badass when you were playing those games. And it was the context of what you're doing, that your emotional feeling towards Batman and the context of being Batman and being in the situation is what made playing the game worth it. And then you look at Arkham Knight and it's like, oh, you're not playing as Batman. You're playing as all these side characters that are much lamer that no one cares about. And it's like, how could you drop the ball that easy? How could you not understand? Like the meme about the Arkham games, it makes you feel like Batman. The people that made the game didn't understand that, and they made a game where you don't play as Batman. Like, how do you fuck that up? Like, it's just so obvious, and it's just crazy. So it's like, so they lose the context of what makes the game good. So they say, okay, well, what do we have to back? So what do we have to back on? Oh, well, let's just, they all know that the grind makes games popular, but it's like there's a fine balance between like how much grinding is good and how much grinding is just too much, right? How much is grinding is you just turn off, or how much grinding without context. If there's not a proper context to the grind, then you completely lose interest in doing it in the first place.
Holy shit. 2014 was the year for movies. My God.
What was 2014?
2014, Ex Machina came out, Lego Movie came out, Fury came out, Nightcrawler came out, Interstellar came out. Like, I was trying to figure out when the fuck did movies fall off the cliff? And it seems like 2014.
Well, 2014 and onward. I mean, that's kind of when like video games started falling off the cliff. I think around 2014 as well, 2015.
The Amazing Spider-Man came out in 2014. Which one is
So-
that?
I know exactly what you're talking
that
about,
one.
Sitch, but
Right.
there's something else here that I don't quite know how to put my finger on it just yet, because I cannot sit down and play Gotham Knights. It's the grinding feels pointless, right? It
Yeah,
just
because he
feels
doesn't have the proper context.
yeah. But here's the thing: I can sit down and play like a hard mode mod of Chrono Trigger from the fucking Super Nintendo days,
Mm-hmm.
where there's like 10 times the amount of grinding the original game had, and I can enjoy that.
I think that's your nostalgia, though. Honestly,
It might be, but like I can sit down and play like new JRPGs because there's like indie devs making them now, right? I can play
Right.
those just fine. They're grindy as fuck. I can still play them. Like, I don't know. I don't know. There's some
'cause-
kinds of grinding that are more engaging than others.
yeah, but that's the trick is to there's as I think it's these two things. There needs to be context to the grind, and there needs to be like the right amount of grind, and it's a delicate balance.
Mm.
Grinding
So-
just sounds awful. Grinding is the part of the job that you're just not looking forward to.
Someone in the chat, there's like two people in the chat complaining about my video game take, but they just complain about it and then they don't. I literally don't understand what the complaint is. What did I say that is disagreeable? You don't think that context is important to a video game? Like when I say, maybe you don't understand what I mean by context. When I say context, I mean
It
story
means POV.
and character and why you're doing the action you're doing. That's all context.
It's the difference between being in the movie and watching the movie from the window.
Exactly. Exactly.
Which
The
I would
emotional
argue is
engagement.
like
yes,
night and day.
Yes.
So I agree with you, Stitch. I think there's like another component to it because, for example, when you're playing like a really highly regarded platformer with really tight controls, good level design, like a Banjo Kazooie or something, you're not thinking, I really am Banjo. You're not thinking like that.
Well,
the actual
yeah,
well,
not every game is Arkham Knight, you know. Sure.
No, but like Banjo is considered one of the best platformers of all time because of the level design and the tight controls and like the humor of the game. And you don't feel like you're Banjo, but there's a challenge there. It's not grindy. It's like a fair challenge. It's a fair fight, you know?
Well, okay, so different games have invoked different feelings, and people like different games for different reasons, right?
Hmm.
I mean, you're not playing Minecraft like I feel like I'm Steve, you know, from Minecraft. Obviously, you know. So yeah, everything has a different thing, and so some games it's like the challenge of playing the game, and then like in Banjo Kazooie, that's exactly what I'm talking about. When you overcome the platform challenge, right? You get that shot, that dopamine or whatever it is in your brain that makes you feel like you accomplished something, right? And then when you like master sort of the maneuverability skill, something, and I like something about it when you're playing a video game that has like complicated movement controls and you get into like the flow where you just move perfectly, it just feels so good. You're like, oh my God. There's some like magic thing that happens, you know, whether it's Spider-Man 2 with the web swinging, whether it's like, I don't know if you ever played like the Shinobi game from PlayStation, where like every time you would attack someone, you got an extra dash, and you'd be like, dash attack. It was just like, oh my God, it just felt so amazing, right?
Yeah,
There's something there.
Yeah. It makes it like the feeling of being in the zone and actually being in the zone in the game are kind of aligned.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
If you're playing Mario and you're like running and jumping perfectly and not missing a beat, you're playing Sonic and you never want to slow down. You know?
Yes, right. Yes, exactly. And maybe it's almost sort of like you feel like you're Sonic. Like it's like you feel like you've become attuned with whatever you're doing on some like perfect level. Like you're in a flow state.
So there are actually like game psychology specialists, and what you're talking about is called game feel.
Mm-hmm.
Game feel is the term.
Real interesting. It's like it's like a flow state, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
I wonder if it has its own Wikipedia page yet. Hold on. Game feel. No, it doesn't. Shit.
Lord Cameron for 2 months says video games can be Skinner boxes. It doesn't mean they all are. You're describing a you problem. Video games should be played to explore ludically. I don't know what that word is. Ludically? Lucidically? I don't know what that means.
That could be.
So I feel like some people are upset because I'm just telling you a harsh truth.
Nobody's upset. I don't.
No,
like,
there's a couple
everyone's here
people.
to chill.
There's
Nobody's
a couple people.
upset.
There's a couple people that are upset because
It's
listen,
mind.
I'm telling you, this is
upset.
someone who's played video games their entire life.
Okay, I
Video
got it. I
games,
got it.
For the most part,
Don't.
not, obviously
I'm waiting.
there are
I'm
some
waiting.
games.
Don't.
Obviously, there are some games that are made more maliciously than there are other games. Obviously, if you've ever played one of those like gotcha games on phone, those are like the most evil
Oh,
games ever that
fuck.
are designed to be evil as possible. And not every game is designed to be that level of evil, but every game at its core level is a Skinner box, and that it's tricking you and thinking you're accomplishing something when you're not really accomplishing a physical thing other than the experience of playing the game, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I've been playing video games my whole life. I'm just telling
Sitch,
you
whatever you do,
what it
don't-
is.
Just
okay?
don't start yelling. I've been playing video games for 30 years. Just don't start. Just don't start yelling.
Okay.
at-
So
Right.
I looked it up. I got it here. So game
Yeah.
feel, sometimes called look feel or game juice, never heard that one
Mhm.
before, is the intangible tactile sensation experienced when interacting with video games.
It's called game juice. I don't know
Game
if I
juice.
approve.
Yeah, it's a little
I don't know
sus.
if I approve of this terminology here.
the
It sounds
different
like-
areas of a game that can be manipulated to improve game feel are input, response, context, aesthetic, metaphor, and the rules. It's
Oh my god!
it's like a quasi spiritual feeling when you're in tune with the game and you kind of forget you're holding a controller and like your brain is just moving the character almost.
Everything you're saying is just so wrong.
Are you sure?
That's hilarious.
Let's see here. The goal of good game feel is to immerse the player in an engaging and rewarding experience. A way to test game feel is to see if interacting with the game's most basic mechanics
well,
feels
so-
satisfying.
Let's
Hold on, one more
sorry.
sentence.
Okay.
At minimum, the game should feel engaging to play even after the plot, points, level design, music, and graphics are removed. If it's not, then the game may suffer from poor game feel.
Interesting.
Did you know that Tropic Thunder and Step Brothers were both made in the same year? Both those movies are epic.
So one of those
Okay.
movies is far greater than the other, and it's obviously Tropic Thunder.
Oh man, I knew you were going to say that. Hi, you just listened to a clip from the Sitch and Adams show. If you like what you heard, you can listen to our live show right here on this channel on Sunday, starting at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And if you want, you can super chat us. We read $20 and up super chats on the show and then do a follow-up stream on the following Tuesday where we read the rest of the unread super chats and interact with fans of the show. Subscribe to this channel right here to listen to the live show or to listen to more of our awesome clips.